Here's a little perspective exercise that, I tried recording once, and because I like to do things as many times as possible, I'm going to do it again. But it's a little, just a good exercise. It has a lot of principles of drawing in perspective. And one thing I'm going to suggest is to, it's an 8-step sequence. And while it's not critical that you follow these exact 8 steps, I find it very helpful to practice things in a way that I'm sort of repeating the steps in a way that I know I'm going to be able to go back and see what I did on which step, as well as just reinforce each step with a decent amount of repetition. So the first very exciting step is I'm going to make a little horizontal line with a couple of endpoints like that. So I'll do that for each step. Not critical. The distance. The length, or if they're lined up or anything like that. In fact, probably good to sort of vary it up a little bit. For my second step, I'm going to make a little bit bigger of a horizontal than this first one. That's a little bit lower down. And I'm going to put a little bit bigger endpoints. This is going to help cue our brain that this point here is actually closer than this point here. But I'll repeat that for steps 2 through 8. And they don't have to be centered. Once again, in fact, it might be kind of good to play with seeing how things change depending on whether they are centered or not. Aligned centrally with each other, I suppose I could say. So there's step 2. Step 3. Just going to connect these, the endpoints of one with the endpoints of another. These are different angled lines. Step 4 is I'm going to estimate and put a little guide point where I think the middle of each line falls, the midpoint of each of these lines. Great exercise just in itself is making a bunch of straight lines and practicing finding the midpoint. It's harder than it looks. I feel like that seems to help me if I kind of sketch each one a little bit. Just whatever helps sort of compare and judge and be able to adjust. So that's those, and now I'm going to indeed connect these midpoints. Next, I'm going to, so I did that for 5 through 8. Next, I'm going to sketch a little diagonal from one corner to one corner. And I'm going to make a little guide point of where that intersects with the line I just drew from midpoint to midpoint. So I'm going from left corner, close left to far right. The other works as well. And I'm intentionally, just FYI, I'm intentionally not doing the crisscross thing, and I may talk about that later, but not right now. So that was that step. Number 7, I'm gonna sketch in a horizontal that goes through that intersecting point that I just made. And last but not least, just to make this feel a little bit like it could turn into some actual object as opposed to just a bunch of dots and line on a piece of paper, I'll add a little rectangle shape down here that would indicate this is some form that has a little bit of height. Maybe a checkers board, or the top of a really small table, or a base in baseball. That would have some curve to it, but that's a different subject. Or tabletop, any one of myriad things. So that's the idea. I'll do it just one more time, kind of just because I like doing these. Vertical, longer, sorry, I knew I was going to do that. Horizontal is what we call that. The opposite of vertical. Longer horizontal. Bigger endpoints. Lower down. Connecting those. And you can probably see that I could mix around this little sequence. There's nothing magical about. There's a few things that are obvious, but some of these things I could probably mix around, like finding midpoints. I'm going to sort of adjust that one because it doesn't look quite right. And then my diagonal, find where that crosses over. Sketch another horizontal. And lastly, sketch a little rectangle here that will indicate that this is some kind of three-dimensional structure. Here's one end of it, and here's the top of it. Hopefully that's pretty obvious. Maybe I'll beef these guys up a little bit just to really just to help my own mind think about what is closer and what's further. What I want to appear closer and further. Anyways, do that a million times. Go slow. I'm trying to I'm probably going too fast. It occurs to me that as I rotated this piece of paper, if you look here, you'll notice that this same idea works in a vertical fashion. Can make a small vertical, well, some sort of vertical with endpoints. Bigger vertical, bigger endpoints, connect, find the midpoints, connect, diagonal, where they cross. Now this could represent something like a framed picture hanging on a wall or something. But several helpful things. This one not so helpful. These don't have to get too obnoxious, but I do for these points. Like I said, anything that helps reinforce your ability to kind of visualize this will help the viewer as well. Okay, check that out. Ooh, you could do it that way. Ooh, you could do it that way too. Okay, I'm getting dizzy. Go try it.